Youth is a lie. It's evil. Those that glorify youth are only fooling themselves and those around them by believing that their surroundings always affirm their actions. By using the word youth, they twist and distort common sense and anything logical. If failure is a hallmark of being young, like they say, then someone who's failed to make friends must be at the peak of his youth, right? Everything must fit into their pre-constructed molds, otherwise you're just an outcast who means nothing to them.
砕け散るのは君の方だ。
Why should I give in to others' ideals if all they're going to do is end up using me for their own personal gain? Why try to socialize if all that's ever done to me is get me hurt? Hachiman Hikigaya is a cynical, introspective, yet surprisingly prideful person who throughout his years of being mistreated and broken at school has formed an awful and pessimistic view on the world. Opting to force himself to fit a loner persona because of his general hatred of interaction with other people. Looking at youth and relationships through a distorted lens of fake personas used by people that are too concerned about lying to themselves and others due to how shallow and fake their relationships are. He articulates and bases his actions off of quick judgments and actively strives to make himself unlikable because he sees no need to participate in things so artificial and trivial as relationships. If one big inconvenience is enough to split apart a group of friends, then how genuine was it anyway? His warped perception of facades used by other people to fit in and try and strive for something real is ironic. He's a hypocrite, criticizing others for putting up facades and lying to themselves, while at the same time living a loner persona that's self-fed and fake. But as fun and entertaining as Oregairu may seem at times, you need look no further than Hachiman to see the shatteringly realistic and human elements of the show, shown through the perspective of someone who throughout his entire life has been rejected, ostracized, bullied, made fun of, and turned away from any chance given, leading to him to conceptualize the world as an awful place that has no need for him, forcing the notion that he needs to assume a loner persona and view showing any type of emotion or weakness as inherently a bad thing, discerning his only reasonable option to dealing with this pain is to make others hate him, to become invisible and stay out of society so he doesn't have to fear the thoughts of pain and suffering. But again, it's all self-fed to keep him from hearing what he wants to hear, that there are people who care about him and hate seeing him be a sacrifice for others' stability and gain. He is someone who deserves the right to happiness and acceptance from others, and not just his little sister, but he can't see that. He wants to believe that there's no place for him in the world, and that the reason he's like this is society's fault for creating a system where you aren't enough, and so have to become multiple people in order to survive and make it in the world. This is probably a good time to segue some of the focus right now into Yuigahama and Yukino, two young girls who are introduced in the first episode as a complete contrast to Hachiman's motives and ideals. While Hiki sees relationships as something that, if cast away and left behind for long enough, you can ultimately restart the relationship as if it never happened. Sure, you won't be as comfortable in their presence as when you used to talk with them, but your memories and feelings with and towards them will forever linger with you. Though in all honesty, it was difficult to find something of great difference between Hachiman and Yukino due to how similar their experiences and personalities are, but I digress. Yukino has never had one single friend before, as stated by her older sister Haruno. Her whole life she's been bullied by other girls because of how much prettier and smarter she was than them. She never got along with other kids because they were always jealous of her, and she always had to live up to her mother's standards of being like her sister Haruno. Haruno has always been a role model for Yukino, but at the same time she's always disliked Haruno. She was something that she wanted to be and felt like she wasn't her own person because of it. Always making her own decisions based on what other people have wanted her to do. A dependency, and a reliance on others to make decisions for her. Even in their school group, Yukino still feels like she's only making decisions for the club, not for the sake of helping others, but because she wants to do so because she feels like she has to do it in order to contribute something in the world that's her own ideas, but is constantly conflicted with herself and reminded of just how dependent on others she really is. And so to combat that thought, she is constantly pushing others away and rejecting any type of help in fear of becoming reliant on them and eventually losing her own sense of will, and so feels like she needs to do everything alone. Yuigahama compared to Hachiman and Yukino is like a complete opposite. She's very scared to say what's on her mind instead of telling people off when she thinks they're wrong, and she tries to fit in with a group of students who could care less about her, and in hope of trying to find someone to give her a genuine relationship, she turned to the service club. While many at first would categorize her as a clumsy, popular bimbo with no real motivation, you actually get a really interesting contrast with her out of three being the best at reading people's emotion and reading the atmosphere, being the one of the group who shares what everyone is thinking or feeling instead of hiding them, being the necessary person in their lives to spice up their everyday while subtly letting her own desires and motives show through the cracks. High school is a very scary place. It's filled with hundreds of people you don't know, and students much older and scarier than like in previous grades. It can be very easy to not find a group of people to fit in with at the start and become lonely and isolated. When I was in 9th grade, I didn't really know anyone. Every one of my friends from middle school and elementary school went to the other popular high school, and I quickly realized how fast friend groups are formed and how impossible it is to fit in with other students you don't know once they form their little friend groups. You become an outcast so quickly and a loner that no one wants to talk to or acknowledge. I've suffered from depression since about the 7th grade, and it's never gotten easier. I don't want anyone to press their concern at all because I'm pretty sure I'm fine now, but it's always been the same feelings of not wanting to disappoint others, feeling like a burden in other people's ways, and that their lives would be so much better if I weren't in their way, making it practically impossible to talk to people without getting severe anxiety and choking on my words, hoping that whoever I interact with, I can eventually break off contact with them and never talk to them again so I won't be another one of their problems. I think Hachiman has a similar type of mentality. Although very confident and sort of narcissistic, I feel as if he harbors the fears of being a burden to other people, and so likes to be by himself. Which is why I think he sacrifices himself for the sake of others, and sees it as the morally correct and just thing to do. And while he could get away with that in the past, because there is no one close enough to tell him off, he now has two people that deeply care about him and his well-being. Yukino and Yui especially, because Hachiman is their first real, genuine friend. They care about him and his well-being and mental state, and it hurts them to see someone that they've grown to care about so much think of himself as a tool to fix other people's problems without any regards to himself. They both believe that even a person who has no hope for himself should be able to live a life of happiness. He doesn't need to put up a loner persona and block people out of his life in order to not get hurt. Hachiman doesn't realize how good of a person he really is, and that he cares about the people around him so much that he's willing to put everything on the line to help them. Yui and Yukino, along with Shizuka, teach him that he doesn't have to be afraid of getting hurt. He doesn't have to fear the intentions and relationships of other people, because hurting people or getting hurt yourself is inevitable. It's not something that you can prevent or try to avoid. Being able to go through those emotions in hard time is what builds the genuine relationships that he so desperately craves. As stated in his speech from Season 2, Episode 8, he doesn't want to understand other people. He doesn't want to be their friends or to be in a relationship or anything like that. He just wants to understand. Understand what that genuine thing that he wants so badly really is. Because not knowing what it is he's looking for terrifies him. He has an idea of what it is that he wants, what type of relationship he's looking for. He just doesn't believe that it's real, that it's impossible to have a genuine relationship where he can force both parties' ugly truths and self-conscious ideals onto each other and accept it. Even more pressure is put onto him when he suddenly realizes that both Yui and Yukino like him and has no clue on how to save both of them. He understands that both of their wishes are to grant the others, and tries his best to grant both of them, but in the end, it's an impossible endless paradox that ends in one of them getting hurt. Both Yui and Yukino also realize this, but that's not an option. No, it can't be. I promised to save them one day, to make them both happy, but that's not possible. One of them will get hurt. And when Yui realizes that it's her wish that's going to be granted, she tries everything in her power to try and prevent it, being fully aware that it's useless. They try putting up a facade to try and create false senses of hope, but they all know it's fake. Something to just postpone the inevitable. And this is where Hachiman learns that it's not possible to save everyone, that hurting somebody is unavoidable. In their group, what they feel is not a one-word answer being codependency. It's something much more than that, something that words itself can't convey, and so tells Yui, "One day, I'll get better at this. Eventually, I think I'll be able to say things properly, be able to accept things properly without having to fuss over my words and reasons. But you don't have to wait for that." A subtle but heart-wrenching scene that tells us who he's going to confess to. I don't want to get too much into the love interest side of things since this is more of an assessment and essay on other things, but I also feel like including this is necessary to fully understand how much someone who thought that there's no hope for himself and no way of finding something genuine was able to change. I would really hate for the ending of this video to be something cheesy, and it probably will be. But there's so much I want to say in such little time. Finding something is worthwhile and possible. It might not seem like it at first, but after you try and fail a lot, you'll find something. You don't need to act like someone else to try and find something. because that won't work and never will. Being yourself in a world that is constantly trying to change you is one of the best things you can do, because it will attract and surround you with people that genuinely care about you and like you for who you and what you are as a person. People will dislike you. There will be people who try to bring you down because you have something that they don't. People who care about you. Relationships may come and go, people get split apart, but if something as minor as not being able to see each other will split you apart, how genuine was that relationship anyway? In time, people will get hurt. It's inevitable. Everyone that you meet will eventually feel some sort of negative emotion towards you, and in time you'll eventually hurt them. But it's the fact that you care about them that you'll know you've hurt them. Caring for them means being open to the fact that you will hurt them, but that's not something to be sad about. Being aware of hurting them is what makes the relationship genuine, because if it's someone you don't care about, you won't notice that you've hurt them. But in the words of Shizuka, thank you so much for sticking to the end of the video. I hope you at least took something on how to view relationships differently and at least care about yourself a little bit more and realize that you do deserve something. So hopefully you got that, what I was trying to portray. But anyway, see you guys in the next video and see you later!